So this is going to be another James Cameron review, and this is the second of two of his biggest money makers of all time. We're going to talk about Avatar, 13 years later.
You Jake Sully?
I'd like to talk to you about a fresh start on a new world.
You are not in Kansas anymore. You are on Pandora.
You should see your faces.
Out there beyond that fence, we have an indigenous population called the Na'vi.
Now they're threatening our whole operation, and you're supposed to be finding a solution.
The concept is to drive these remotely controlled bodies called avatars. They're grown from human DNA, mixed with DNA of the natives.
Just relax and let your mind go blank. It shouldn't be hard for you. You should not be here.
I need your help. Outstanding.
You have a strong heart. No fear.
Haven't gotten lost in the woods, have you?
Do you forget what team you're playing for?
You knew this would happen?
Everything changed.
Quaritch is rolling and there's no stopping him.
We're going up against gunships.
Well, I guess we better stop him.
Avatar. This film is not...
Okay, so welcome back to the Cameron Review series, leading up to my review of Avatar: The Way of Water, which I've already seen. But here we are with Avatar. So Avatar was the second of two of Cameron's biggest money makers. It came out in December 18th, 2009, 13 years ago. And I remember this movie being marketed. I didn't know what much was about. All I knew is that it had James Cameron's name on it. And the very first teaser poster I remember was the poster of just one of the avatars with the title. And it said December 18th. That's all I knew. And everybody, this was a big thing back in 2009. Because everyone was thinking about, what is Avatar? What's that going to be about? What is it? I want to see what it is. And so, when it came out, a lot of people, just like the last top movie he did, thought this was going to bomb. But, little do we know, this will shock everyone in 2009. But before I get into my thoughts, if you guys are new to the channel, all my social media links in the description box down below, to my Facebook, all the way to my serialized. As if you would like to send any money to my Cash App or Chime to financially support the channel, it helped me. That would be greatly appreciated. My Amazon wish list is also in the description box as well, in case you want to send anything from my Amazon wish list. Not asking you to, but if you want to, go right ahead. So before we get into talking about this movie, I just want to share how this movie came to be and my personal first exposure to it. The development of this movie began in 1994 when James Cameron wrote an 80-page story treatment for the movie. And after Titanic, he was supposed to film this movie for a planned release for 1999. But the technology was not necessary yet to achieve his vision of the film. So then a few years passed. In between that, he was going to do a sequel to True Lies, but because of 9/11, that got scrapped as well. And so he made two documentaries, Ghost of the Abyss and The Aliens of the Deep. And also with that, in 2005, he began working on the movie again with the Na'vi language, and he began developing the screenplay in 2006. And this was budgeted at $237 million due to the groundbreaking array of new visual effects Cameron wanted to achieve in going to New Zealand with Weta Digital Other estimates has caused this movie to be at 280 and 310 million plus 150 million for promotion, and this movie had extensive uses of motion capture filming techniques and was released in the traditional viewing with all different 3D experiences. And so back when this movie came out, everyone loved it. Critics praised the groundbreaking effects, the direction, and the score. But the movie has, over since time, has gotten some very big detraction. And for the script, the runtime, and the story. And it broke a lot of box office records. For 12, it was the highest grossing movie for nearly a decade until Avengers Endgame came out, which I still feel like that was more of the big highest grossing movie ever than this, in my personal opinion. But a Chinese re-release led to the movie being taken again, and it is adjusted for inflation as the second highest grossing movie, after Gone with the Wind with a total of more than $3 billion, and the first film to gross more than $2 billion, and the best-selling video title of 2010s. Got some Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Best Director, and it won Best Camera Work, Best Visual Effects, and Best Cinematography, and caused a big 3D thing with 3D films to increase the popularity in electronics for 3D. So, and with the movie's success, we would get sequels to this. One of them, which is out now. I first became exposed to this movie in 2011. I remember first seeing it on DVD, and even though it was long, I was young at the time. I was 12, going on 13 at that time when I first saw this, and I remember really loving it. At this time, I was just wanting to watch movies to watch movies. I didn't have the idea of wanting to do like YouTube and such until a few years in 2014. This movie, when it came out, I loved it. I had no issues with it. I used to be one of those people who thought it was the greatest thing ever. And unfortunately, I saw this on DVD, so I was not one of those people who watched it, and one of those people who didn't watch the movie in 3D. But over the years, this movie has garnered a lot of unfair hate, especially for the story, and saying it's either great visuals but no story. It's just the same movies we've seen other ones done worse. It's one of the worst movies ever made, and it's one of the most overrated pieces of crap. So I was excited but really, really nervous to it. And many people is going on saying it has no cultural impact because of no toys or marketing or Funko Pops or something. But this movie has garnered a cultural impact with many people who do love the movie. You have books, you had a video game, you even had the little action figures of it. And I have always put this as one of my favorite movies of all time, but there's always been something here that stopped me from saying it's James Cameron's top 3. But I do like the movie enough that I actually have a poster of this movie from Disney Movie Insiders, which was the re-release poster for 4K, and it's coming to 4K next year. So I wanted to watch this with some fresh eyes and see how this would go, because I have not watched the movie since 2011, and this time I wanted to watch the extended edition with 16 minutes online. And just like with Titanic, I decided to treat this movie as an all Hollywood film with an intermission. And there are things in this movie that there are problems with this movie, which is why this review is going to be a little different. And I'll say this, I did like the extended cut of this movie way more. There's a lot more scenes they add, how Earth has became, and some other scenes in there that I'm not going to go into because I don't want to be here for too long talking about the differences. But I have to say, this is not the masterpiece of filmmaking everyone says it is, but it's not the worst movie ever made. In my opinion, my 2 cents, I think this is a great movie, but it is extremely overrated. And this movie has some huge glaring flaws that most people don't want to address. But when I say the movie's overrated, that doesn't mean I hate it. Okay? Just because I'm saying Avatar is overrated does not mean I hate the movie. I can definitely see why some people say this is overrated, and I will put a link to Cinemassacre's video to this movie in the description box down below in case you want to see someone else's point of view of it and how he explains it. But I don't think this is one of the worst movies ever made. So while it is overrated, I can still say I still really enjoy this movie. On the lush alien world of Pandora lived the Na'vi, beings who appear primitive but are highly evolved. Because the planet's environment is poisonous, human Na'vi hybrids called avatars must link to human minds to allow for free movement on Pandora. Jake Sully, a paralyzed former Marine, becomes mobile through one such as Avatar and falls in love with a Na'vi woman, Neytiri. As a bond with her grows, he is drawn into battle for the survival of their world. This is written, co-produced, co-edited, and directed by James Cameron, stars Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Stephen Lang, Joe David Moore, Giovanni Ribisi, CCH Pounder, Wes Studi, Laz Alonso, and Sigourney Weaver. So going into the negatives when it comes to this movie, I'm going to do the criticisms first, so I can get all of my criticisms out in this movie, and I will touch on this. To most of the Avatar haters, I understand. To the Avatar defenders, I get it. And yes, I was one of them people who is questioning why Cameron's doing just Avatar sequels and nothing else. But we're going to go into the negatives first. And there are some negatives in this movie, and small negatives. I will say this, no matter what version of this movie you watch, this movie is insanely too long. Again, I watched the 178-minute version with the extended footage. I have to watch it online because I don't have the collector's edition pack of this movie. But there are some scenes here that are very good. I did like some of the new added stuff that Cameron puts in his extended cuts. One thing you have to give it up to Ridley Scott or James Cameron is that when they have extended cuts, sometimes they can be better than the theatrical cuts. And I will say this. Even though I enjoy a lot of this movie's pacing and some of the build-up and the world building, there are quite a couple of scenes in this movie that does kind of drag.
Why?
And you definitely feel that in this movie's runtime. This movie definitely could have easily used maybe 20 to 45 minutes. Now, when it gets to the good stuff in Pandora and some of the adventure stuff, those parts don't really drag as much. It's just some slow moments here and there that you could have easily trimmed down a few segments here and there. And I will say that the movie is too fucking long. Don't get me wrong, I'm not bored with a 3-hour movie, and I like the all Hollywood feel, but you could have easily done some trimming on this, James Cameron. Just enough to be like 2 hours and 20 minutes, 2 hours and 19 minutes, and it would have flowed a lot more faster. Again, you would have to sacrifice a couple of moments of talking and such, but for most people, it would have helped them for most of this movie. The characters are definitely not James Cameron's finest hour. They're not bad characters, and I don't hate the characters, and despite the actors who portraying them, I remember their names very well. I remember the names of each of these characters. But I will say that the characters here are far from Cameron's best, and they don't get as much focus as the visuals does. And this is why I do have to kind of put a little bit of the James Cameron ego into him, because he's trying to focus on making the biggest thing ever. I feel like the characters, for me personally, gets heavily sidelined in this movie, and I do feel like there was a better way you could win about that, other than just focusing on one thing and focusing on the other. I felt like you could have a secondary person in the writing to make the characters much more relevant here. They're not bad characters. I just don't think that they are the strongest.
Bitch, you better be joking.
The social commentary and the parallels, they are on the nose, but it's never to a point where it's the great. He is talking about colonialism, and it does intrigue me, and I do appreciate that, but I definitely can see why it is a little bit on the nose in this movie. The biggest issues, yes, this is pretty much the same story that we have seen, been there and done that. So I will definitely agree with you guys on that. You could definitely tell that this is the same been there, done that story, with Dances with Wolves and Pocahontas, Fern Gully, and Spades the Last Samurai. All of those great movies, except Pocahontas, and that criticism to me has always been blown out of proportion. There are some heavy influences with those movies in this movie, and I'm not going to try to deny it, especially with the white savior thing, which I can understand. That's been done better, like Star Wars and Dune and Lord of the Rings and such. But even some of my favorite movies of all time borrows or takes influences from other types of media. So I think that criticism is blown out of proportion.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Are done way better in those other movies I just mentioned. But the way it's done here, I feel like it's not executed. It depends on execution. You can have a good story and influences, but if you don't execute it right, as I say plenty of times, it means nothing. And I'm going to keep saying that, especially in 2023 with some movies, old and new. But I do think it's a fine story for what we have seen before. I will definitely agree with this. The villains are very one-dimensional and extremely over the top. Even though I enjoy Stephen Lang and Giovanni Ribisi, their performances, you gotta admit, guys, they are so over the top where it is very cartoonish as fuck, especially Quadrich and Joel David Moore's character. And it's good to see them be over the top, but I just wish these two villains were a bit more restrained and had more going for them. They're not bad villains. No. It's just the performances and the way they're written to be so over the top and reminiscent of Aliens. So I can definitely agree with that criticism there. I will honestly say the biggest negative is the script. There's great elements in here, and there's great moments of dialogue, but I feel like the script could use a secondary writer, which I've heard that does kind of help wave water for most people. But there are some, I respect the fact that Cameron is so passionate, but a secondary screenwriter could have easily benefited from the characters being way better and having a little bit more surprises. And the MacGuffin thing thereafter could have been so much better. Cowards! Like, there is a very cringy dialogue where it says, well, now my day is ruined. And unobtainium.
Well, that's just fucking great!
Really? Unobtainium? So all of those criticisms, I will definitely agree with you on. It is reminiscent of movies. It is too long. The characters are not the strongest. The villain is not the strongest. And the script could have been much more better. But, on the flip side, I appreciate a lot of stuff with this movie, even with its glaring flaws. even though this is a story we've seen before, Cameron, he does the best to try and make it his own. It's not executed in the strongest ways it could have been because the script could have been a little more stronger, but I will definitely say Cameron does the absolute best he can in doing what he sets out to do, and I can't hate the guy for having a vision. That is actually not a bad thing when it comes to the way the direction is. Cameron brings everything he got into the direction. And Cameron always has to say, the visuals and the world building and the look and the landscapes and everything about Pandora looks great. Of course, it's all CGI, of course, so you can definitely feel a little disconnected for most of you. And you could have used some more practicality here, with some of the worlds being a little bit more practical, and maybe a few of the Na'vi having some practical makeup and such. But Cameron always has to say, and he does do the best he can with what he's doing when it comes to his vision. I can also say that the visual effects here and the production design so amazingly beautiful. For the $310 to $237 million budget, whichever one you want to say, the money is on the screen. This is one thing I can count on with James Cameron, for better and worse. He puts so much time and so much energy into making this as visually immersive as you can. And even when I first saw this, I was like, Pandora sounds like a very cool world I would love to go to. And we did get a little app radio station for phones called Pandora Radio. So this movie that app did take a little homage for this. And I can definitely say that even with the storytelling and issues and the overall message of the movie, I'm still blown away with so much effort he put into this, with the visual effects team at Weta, with the production designers, with the cinematographer, which is a gorgeous looking movie, and with his direction himself. It's visually immersive and feel like you're into a whole new world. You don't want to leave there, and I think that is also very good with this. Exploring the world of the Na'vi and the lore and the incredible sense of spectacle with the technology, I think that is also very well done. You can tell that Cameron puts his all into it in terms of direction and such, and it goes for it. This movie does not let you down when it comes to the direction of the visuals there. Cinematography wise, as I said, I love the cinematography in this movie. It's gorgeous and breathtaking to look at. And that is one technical aspect I am curious to talk. I'm very excited to talk about with the Way of Water. I can also say that this is a very well edited film by James Cameron and Stephen Rifkin and John Ruffalo, for the most part, aside from its draggy moments. When the action scenes and the character stuff, even with the scenes on Pandora with Neytiri and Jake, the love story, while some people don't think it's the best, I do like the love story between them. So I can definitely give points there. James Horner's score, the late great James Horner, score is amazing here. Despite using some themes from other movies being reminiscent here, it's still a great score. I love the theme song, I See You by Leona Lewis. It's a really beautiful theme from the first film. And rest in peace, James Horner. He was an awesome composer that was taken from us way too early. Way too early. The acting here, I will say this, is very strong from everyone. There is some weak links here. Sam Worthington, while he's not the most outstanding actor ever, I think the biggest problem with him back in the late 2000s and 2010s is that they was trying to make this guy be in everything, and he was just not ready for that type of thing. I liked him in Terminator Salvation, of course. He was pretty solid there. I don't give a shit if I'm the only person who likes that movie. Here is Jake Sully. Not much to the character. And he is the same typical white savior character, but I think Worthington does do the best he can for what he is given there as Sully. But when he's in the motion capture suit, he does very good. I'll get to the motion capture after that, but you can tell that he was doing his best. Now, originally Matt Damon was going to be playing this character, but he turned it down because of his commitments to the Bourne film series. Sigourney Weaver as Dr. Grace Augustine. It is just always great to see Sigourney Weaver, no matter what movie she's in. She's amazing as Grace. I liked her character. As Giovanni Ribisi as Parker Selfridge, he's over the top, but I think he does fine for what he's given. I do like Giovanni Ribisi and other things. He was even ridiculously over the top in Tailed, but he was good there too. Dilip Rao as Dr. Max Patel, I thought he did fine. Joel David Moore is Dr. Norm Spellman. He's an xenomorphophagist who studies plant animal life. He was really good in the movie too. Y'all saw Michelle Rodriguez is basically playing that same tough chick she does in all her other movies. But Michelle Rodriguez, I've always found her to be a good actress. I know some people will say she's just the girl who plays badass characters, but it is very similar to Letty and such, but she was really good here as Trudy Chekhov. She does the best she can. Again, not much with these characters, but I think they do good here. Stephen Lang as Dr. Miles Cordras, like I said, he's over the top in this movie, but he has so much fun with it. And Stephen Lang is a phenomenal actor. Don't Breathe and other movies, he is an amazing actor. So, despite my worries when it came to him coming back for the Avatar 2, because he's basically going to be the Agent Smith of the Avatar movies. But you know what? If they can give us more of a character with him, I'm fine with it. But Stephen Lang did good here. Michael Biehn was going to take this part, but ultimately he was not cast. Now, the Na'vi, on the other hand, you have Zoe Saldana as Neytiri. I think she is the best actress in here. And without this movie, you wouldn't have Andy Serkis' Caesar and so many other motion capture characters like Thanos or Smaug. So, I do have to give credit to this for really giving motion capture a boost. Zoe Saldana as Neytiri, she does a great job with this. You can tell that she has feelings for Jake because of his bravery and his determination, and for frustrated with him for what she sees as stupidity, and she serves as the love interest. And it was the character, like all the other Na'vi, was created used motion capture and CGI, but Saldana does a fantastic job. Even in her scenes with her and Sam Worthington, I think their chemistry is very good. CCH Pounder as Moat in the series Murder, she was good. Wes Studi from Dances with Wolves, he was really good in the movie. Laz Alonso, he does a pretty good job in the movie as well. At the beginning of the film's story as Sully. He does get, unfortunately he's not in the other sequels, but Laz Alonso, I always liked that guy as an actor. Leprechaun 2, which is Guilty Pleasure, and also The Boys, he's great as Mother's Milk. So you have a pretty strong cast. Some work more than others, but I think everyone does a good job in what they set out to do. The technical aspects are very good. I do like the fact that this is a movie that you definitely enjoy with James Cameron, what he's trying to do. Even the action scenes, Cameron goes all out with the action sequences. They're not some of his greatest, but I think there's some very epic action scenes. And flying on the creatures and those little Matrix Revolutions type machines, which they did take reference from Matrix Revolutions. Good on you, Cameron. But even with that, the action scenes I think were all really good. I definitely enjoyed them. The creatures look very good. Again, the story is derivative. I'll give you that. And yes, I will say, they can be very similar. The love story, of course, is way better here than it was in Pocahontas because that was historically inaccurate. And yes, the love story is similar, but I can forgive it here because Avatar, it is its own movie. It goes in the sandbox to go out without being called for historical act. Overall, this is a movie, while I do like the visuals, I like the performances, I like the technical aspects and the world building and the execution, there are some problems when it comes to this. When it comes to the characters, the story, and the script, even the pacing. But there's a lot more good than bad. Again, maybe hugely overrated, but I still very much enjoyed this movie to its extent. And while it's not a masterpiece, while it's not in my top 100, and while I would never say this is my favorite James Cameron movie, this is a movie I think was culturally impactful for the time being, and it still has a lot of good things to it. And I'm happy to say it still holds up, despite its problems. If I have to give this movie a grade now, I wouldn't be giving this a Spider-Verse, because there are problems I do have with this. But I can definitely vouch and say that this is a epitastic film. Again, if you're one of those people who did not like Avatar the first time, try watching the movie again with fresh eyes. Watch the extended cuts, but take an intermission. But be warned, if you still don't like it, that's fine. Well, that's going to do it for the video that you just watched. I will have my channel here, so you would like to see anything here. Click the channel icon, subscribe for more. I will also leave a video and maybe a playlist here, so in case you want to see what I'm about. As always, stay Epictasticness, join the Epictasticness, and you guys keep it cool.